Good morning, everybody. I'm Richard Moore. This is Thursday morning, 3 a.m. I certainly hope your Thursday is going well, and I'm glad you could be with me today. And thanks for listening and reading all the time. I didn't get to yesterday. I wanted to talk about Tony Evers's State of the State address here in Wisconsin. There are a couple of issues that really need to be addressed, and the Republicans. We need to be looking at the Republicans to make sure they do the right thing. The first, I won't talk about this morning. I'll just mention because I'm going to write about it next Tuesday, and that's state tax reform. Governor Evers said in the State of the State that the Republican proposal for a flat tax is dead. And quite frankly, folks, that's not a bad thing. A flat tax, a flat income tax, is certainly superior to a progressive income tax. The Republican proposal for a flat tax is certainly better than anything the Democrats and Tony Evers are going to come up with. However, if we do a flat tax now, many Republicans are calling it, oh, it's transformative tax reform. No, it's not. It's not transformative tax reform. It's still an income tax. Transformative tax reform is getting rid of the state income tax. And if we do the flat tax now, which isn't going to happen because he's going to veto it, but if we do the flat tax now, we wouldn't get elimination of the state income tax. That's what we need. But I'll be writing about that next week. The other issue that came up in the governor's speech was shared revenue. And this has me a little worried about what the Republicans might do. The governor has been talking for months and months and months about the need to increase shared revenue to local governments. Buckets of money going to local governments. He says, and the Wisconsin Towns Association, the Wisconsin Counties Association, the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, oh, we're being strangled by levy limits. We have levy limits here in Wisconsin that limit how much counties and local governments can raise property tax. And then they can also have a 0.6 local option sales tax. Most counties have one. It's a little bit less than that. I think it averages around 5 cents. But beyond that, they are strictly controlled in how much they can tax. And they are controlled for a reason. Because back during the Democratic years when Jim Doyle was governor, local governments went on a massive spending spree. And now they want to be able to go end run around these levy limits and go on another spending spree. We shouldn't let it happen. Now, this proposal, like I said, came out of the Wisconsin Counties Association, the Wisconsin Towns Association, and the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. Now, let's examine exactly who these groups are. We elect our officials to represent us. Say in county government, we elect our county board. County government is an administrative arm of the state. Its job is to enforce state policy and law. Uh, Local control, where it can be done, is good so long as it does not violate constitutional rights, such as taking away property rights or violate state law. So when we elect our county officials, we are electing them to represent our interests in enforcing the state policy. And when we need that state policy to change or desire it to change, we elect our county officials, our local officials, to represent our interest in that with the state legislature. But that's not what happens in this state. What happens is these local officials form these little special interest clubs like the Wisconsin Counties Association. And they get together and they take our taxpayer money to fund the operations and salaries of these groups. And they outsource the lobbying that they should be doing on our interests to these quasi-government associations, which, by the way, are not subject to the open records and open meetings laws. And then they go to the legislature and lobby. And most often, they end up lobbying against our interest. They have lobbied against concealed carry legislation. They lobby to raise taxes. They lobby to get rid of levy limits. They lobby most of all for more money for the institutions of government. They don't represent us, they represent the institutions of government. Their statement after Evers embraced their proposal for this 20% taking of 20% of the sales tax revenue and giving it away to local governments. Their statement said, and I'm just quoting here, our three statewide local government associations and the thousands of locally elected officials we represent are prepared to continue our work with the legislative and executive branches of government as we soon begin state budget deliberations to ensure sustainable funding of critical local services and an equitable distribution of state aid to local governments. Notice what they said. They're prepared to continue to work, but to on behalf of the local elected officials we represent. They don't represent us, they represent those officials and what those officials and the institutions of government they're in, so that they get more and more money. They should be done away with, actually, in their present form. So this proposal should be killed. But unfortunately, some of the reaction to the governor's speech, where he said this is probably a good idea, was the Republicans seemed to be drinking the Kool-Aid. I didn't hear many of them talk specifically about this proposal, but I heard quite a number of Republicans talking about how our local governments indeed do need more money. Here is, for instance, State Senator Republican Mary Felskowski. She said, and she starts out good, for our tradespeople, teachers, and healthcare professionals who've been waiting months for their licenses, the state needs to do better. That's true. But then she goes Democrat. For our local governments who are struggling to provide core services to our communities, the state needs to do better. For our firefighters, EMS personnel, and police officers that feel ignored, the state needs to do better. Okay, so the question here is, does the state really need to do better? And are these local governments struggling to provide core services? I would submit to you that they are not. They go out and spend on all sorts of things. What kind of things do they spend? They build new buildings. They buy land. They hire an army of zoning regulators to go out and overregulate us and take away our property rights. They pay memberships like $50,000 a year to the regional planning commissions. Those regional planning commissions compete with private companies. They come in and do things like redistricting and comprehensive land plans, that in many cases the counties could do themselves or hire private firms for. And when they come in and do them, you have to pay again. So you may pay a $50,000 membership fee to the Regional Planning Commission, but then you pay $50,000 more, say, for a redistricting plan. They run things like master gardeners programs. You know, I love master gardeners programs, but really, should taxpayers be funding master gardeners program? Is that a core function of government? So it goes on and on and on. And I submit to you that if they would cut their spending, we wouldn't have struggling communities. If they cut their unnecessary spending, we wouldn't have local governments struggling to fund core services, if indeed they are. I'll give you just two quick examples of why we need to keep levy limits in place and not let local governments take an end run around it. Back during the Trump administration, I think it was about 2018, it was about 2 years after the election. I was driving around, coming home one day. It was a beautiful day, so I took some tours through some towns. About an hour and a half from here is the city of Antigo. And it was once, years and years ago, a thriving, prosperous small town like many Midwestern small towns. Wide boulevards, beautiful buildings. But when I came through Antigo in 2018, it was a dreary, sad place. Many of the windows in the streets were broken, in the stores in the street were broken. Many were boarded up. You ride around the residential neighborhoods, and there were working class homes, but they were no longer well kept. They were falling down. They were dilapidated. It was a scene of poverty everywhere, a dreary sense of doom and gloom on what was a sunny day. There was just two things that I noticed that stood out to me that day. One was the number of Trump signs that still 2 years after the election were still standing in front yards. People were desperate. They wanted hope, and Donald Trump had given them hope. The second thing I noticed was, you know how you can take a large black and white photograph and there's a splash of color on it, and that splash of color stands out? As I drove around this dreary black and white scene in Attigo, what stood out were government buildings because they weren't dilapidated. Their windows weren't boarded up. Their windows weren't smashed. They were bright, shiny, new, gleaming government buildings in a sea of poverty. And it really turned my stomach. Local governments aren't struggling. The other thing, and this is why we need levy limits, because this is what will happen one more time if we let them end run the levy limits with all this new shared revenue they want to give. Back in the mid 1990s, Oneida County here wanted to build a new jail. They had a 40-bed jail. There were too many. It was overcrowded. Okay, so you needed a new jail. So they hired an architectural firm to do a needs study. And they came in and they said, well, look, over the last 10 years, crime has risen by this much, and your population has grown by this much. And if that continues in the next 10 years, you're going to need, no, not a double the size of the jail. You're not going to need to triple the size of your jail. You're going to need to explode by 5 times the size of the jail. You need 200 beds, not 40. Now, the problem with the whole study, of course, was that the crime rate that they used was not Oneida County crime rate, it was the state crime rate, including high crime areas, urban areas. And also at the same time, the country's crime had peaked in the mid to early 1990s and was beginning to decline. And that was the case also in Wisconsin. So drawing a straight trend line, the crime was going to continue, even if that was our crime rate, was a flaw of the study. And also there were demographic studies that showed that Oneida County's population was going to level off and not grow. So those, you didn't need anywhere near a 200 bed jail. But guess what? The county did it. They passed it. And not only that, wait for it, you got to know what's coming next. The architectural firm that they hired to do the jail was the same firm that told them they needed that big jail. Oh boy. So then we put $1 million a year on the tax roll to pay for this Taj Mahal, and it has been empty. When it's not empty, it's because of times when we've had housed state inmates, not local needs. But we built this Taj Mahal, as one county supervisor called it. And then when the debt was paid off, guess what? The $1 million never came off the tax roll. They spent it for other things. Now, that's why we got levy limits. That's why we need levy limits. That's what will happen if we let county and local governments spend what they want to do. And you talk about education. I'll give you one more quick example. Education, universal school choice will take care of school funding problems. It's better education. It gives parents control of their kids' education, and it's a cheaper and more efficient education. So what we need to do is nip this bud in the proposal. Local governments, all that said, sometimes are squeezed. I'm not going to deny that. But if there are mechanisms and tools to deal with it. If a local government is squeezed and they need more money that they can't tax for under the current structure, there's a mechanism. They can go to referenda. They can go to the public and say, we need to exceed the levy limits, and then the public can decide whether it's a legitimate request or not. If there is a regional or statewide issue, say we do need more EMS, do need more police, if we need to take care of our fighters, then, excuse me, then the government, local governments, the legislature needs to step in and do that and tether the spending to the specific need. And finally, and perhaps most important, they just need to cut the spending and cut and go in and just fund core government functions. I'm a firm believer that if you just fund core government functions, you can take care of social services. You can have a robust safety net. You can take care of children in need and adults in need too. You can take care of everything and still have low taxes, still get rid of the state income tax if you just cut the spending that government shouldn't be doing in the first place. That's my commentary for this morning. Monday, I'll have part 2 written of ESG investing, how the government is driving ESG investing through mandates. And then on Tuesday, we'll talk about state tax reform and back with more Wednesday morning, 3 a.m. Audio cast next week. I hope everybody has a great day. Please subscribe. Please spread the word. And I appreciate those of you who are listening and reading. Thanks. Have a great day.